Hello, I'm Phil Svitek, 360 Creative Coach, and in this episode, I want to talk about a phrase that I learned from my therapist, Chuck, which is, if you're not free to leave, then you were never really free to stay. And I say this often to people in terms of relationships, romantic relationships, but it applies to other aspects of life. And whenever I sort of say that, they're confused by it. And that's why I want to I want to go into it, right? Because I think it is very applicable and can help you if truly understood. Now, before I fully get into it, though, I would like to take the opportunity to invite you to subscribe if you haven't already. That way you get all the various lessons and episodes that I put out right when I put them out. Thank you if you just did, and thank you if you already were. It truly does mean a lot to me, as I hope it does to you. So let's get into this, right? We're going to start with the romance side of it and then kind of expand it out, right? So if you're not free to leave, then you were never really free to stay. Meaning, it's a toxic relationship, right? You're essentially held hostage in that relationship, right? Because of course, at the end of the day, whoever you're with, you want to be with them not because of this perceived obligation or codependency or whatever else. No, you want to be with that person because they give you something, right? And not just I'm not just talking about materially, but they enhance your life. Like, you are better by being with them as opposed to not, right? It's something in that sense of people often question me of like, do I get jealous? And my answer is no, and they're like, well, how can that be? It's like, because if a person's going to stay with me, I want it to be because they truly want that, right? As opposed to trying to keep other people out of their life and so forth. I want to be the best person I can be truly for them, right? So again, because jealousy really speaks to, well, if you're not free to leave, then you were never really free to stay. It implies this sort of, it's conditional, right? That's really what it comes down to. It's a conditional relationship ultimately, and it's not something that I strive for, and quite frankly, I don't think anyone should, right? That's really what it all is about. And it can extend to friendship. And certainly, when we talk about, work in that sense, just by the nature of it, is always going to be transactional, right? But when you really kind of think about this and to what extent, especially it applies in your job, you never want to find yourself, that's how you can essentially, if you really think about it, find yourself in a toxic environment when you really kind of process this as like, okay, if I was to leave this job, would they actually be rooting for me or not? Or, to an extent, would they care or not, right? And if that answer is like, yes, they'd be rooting for me, or like, no, at the very least, they wouldn't care, then okay, that's not a bad place to be, because certainly there are many horror stories of people that, if they quit or move on or so forth, all of a sudden now they're marked as like a traitor, ungrateful, and so forth. And if that sounds horrific, then that's great. It means you've not experienced this, and that's great. But unfortunately, especially when it comes to the entertainment industry, but I could see it also applying to like Wall Street and, especially high finance and so forth, politics perhaps, it does apply, right? Because not that it's like blackmail, but once you get into those areas where it is so transactional and fake relationships and so forth, then yeah, the idea of like you freely leaving, is BS, right? I mean, one of the biggest indicators people talked about, and it makes sense if you're in a toxic relationship or toxic work environment, is when they say, like, we're like a family. It's like, no, work is not like a family. That doesn't mean don't enjoy being with the people that you work with and so forth, and collaborate and really be there for each other and stuff like that, and have a just cause that collectively you're moving towards. But you're not a family, right? Because it's conditional love at that point, if it is love, right? So that's why when I really kind of think about if you're not free to leave, you were never really free to stay. It applies to all these facets, romantic, friendship, also even family, right? Family, work, and all that stuff. It really applies in those various aspects when you really kind of consider it, right? And I understand why it's hard for people when they first kind of hear the phrase of like, well, wait, hold on, what does that mean, right? But I think it is a very powerful one, and once you start to kind of see the world through that lens and examine it through that lens, then it does make sense and can actually help you identify the types of relationships you have in the world, right? Again, romantic, friendship, work environments, and so forth. So that's why I wanted to share. So I hope this has been of benefit. As always, feel free to ask questions, whether down below or hit me up on social media at Svitek. Likewise, offer up any thoughts of your own, right? I would love to hear from you. Or as well, if you think that you would benefit from more direct interaction, well, that's what my Patreon page is for, patreon.com/PhilSvitek. We can interact more directly there. That's what it's there for, right? Thank you so much. I appreciate you and hope to see you next time.